My ex-fiancée texted me 2 weeks before my wedding saying she needed to see me one last time, that everything wasn't what I thought. 6 years ago, she destroyed my life the night before our wedding by sleeping with my half-brother in our bed, and now she wanted closure. I decided to give it to her, just not the kind she was expecting. My name's Marcus, and in 2 weeks I'm marrying the most exceptional woman I've ever known. Diane is a criminal defense attorney, the kind who walks into a courtroom and owns it without raising her voice. She's sharp, grounded, and somehow sees the best in me even when I can't see it myself. After what happened 6 years ago, I never thought I'd trust anyone enough to try this again. But here I am, suit tailored, vows written, completely certain. And then Claire's text arrived like a ghost I thought I'd buried. The message was short. Marcus, I need to talk to you before your wedding. Please. You don't understand what really happened. I stared at my phone screen for a solid minute, chest tightening like someone had their hands around my ribs. I hadn't heard from this woman in 6 years. Not a word, not an accidental run-in, nothing. There was a very good reason for that silence. 6 years ago, Claire and I were 24 hours away from getting married. Everything was ready. The venue was a restored barn upstate that cost more than my first car. My suit was pressed and hanging in the hotel closet. Her dress was some designer thing her mother had cried over when she tried it on. 200 guests were flying in from across the country. We'd been together 5 years, lived together for 3, and I was stupid enough to believe I knew her completely. The night before the wedding, I realized I'd left the backup rings at our apartment. I'd been staying at a hotel with my groomsmen for the traditional separation thing, but the rings were in my nightstand drawer. No big deal. I'd just drive over, grab them, and be back before anyone noticed I was gone. I used my key to let myself in around 10:30. The lights were on, which seemed normal. I figured Claire was doing last-minute preparations with her bridesmaids, or maybe couldn't sleep from wedding nerves. I walked down the hallway toward our bedroom and heard her laugh. But it wasn't her normal laugh, the one she used with friends or when I said something dumb. This was intimate, breathy, the kind of sound I thought she reserved for me. I opened the door without knocking because it was my apartment, my bedroom, my life. Claire was in our bed with my half-brother, Nathan. They weren't scrambling to cover up or trying to explain. They just froze, staring at me with this look that wasn't shock. It was resignation, like they'd been waiting for this moment and finally it had arrived. I understood everything in that instant. This wasn't a mistake, wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a pattern, a choice they'd been making for who knows how long while I planned our future. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything or demand explanations. I just stood there in the doorway, my brain trying to process the impossible scene in front of me. Nathan started to say something, mouth opening with what I'm sure would have been some pathetic excuse. Claire pulled the sheet up to her chest and said my name over and over like a broken prayer. Marcus, Marcus, Marcus. Then she said the thing I'll never forget, the words that are burned into my memory deeper than any vow we'd written. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, I'm so sorry, but I never wanted to marry you. I wanted him. I've always wanted him. Our wedding was in 14 hours, and she was telling me I was never supposed to be the groom. I turned and walked out. Didn't wait for Nathan's excuses or Claire's tears. I got in my car and drove back to the hotel in complete silence. No music, no thoughts, just this vast emptiness where my future used to be. By midnight, I'd called the venue and canceled everything. By 2 a.m., I drafted an email to all 200 guests explaining the wedding was off due to unforeseen circumstances and I'd handle any travel reimbursements personally. By 6 a.m., I'd packed 2 suitcases with everything I couldn't live without. By noon on what should have been my wedding day, I was in my car driving 4 hours to Seattle, where my college roommate had been trying to convince me to start a business with him for the past 2 years. I never spoke to Claire again. Blocked her number, blocked her email, blocked every single social media account. Cut Nathan out of my life completely, which meant I also had to distance myself from my father since Nathan was his golden child from his second marriage. I left behind friends, my apartment, my job at the architecture firm, everything. Just packed up the wreckage and disappeared. The first year was brutal. I worked 20-hour days on our construction management startup because when I stopped working, I started thinking. Thinking about when the affair started, how long they'd been lying to me, whether our entire relationship had been a facade. Questions that had no answers and would drive me insane if I let them. But somewhere around year 2, things started clicking. Our software actually solved real problems for contractors. By year 3, we'd made the state's fastest-growing companies list. By year 4, I'd bought out my partner's share and expanded to 4 cities. And somewhere along the way, Claire and Nathan just faded into background noise. That's when I met Diane. She was representing a client in a dispute with one of my subcontractors. She was fierce in that conference room, wouldn't let me slide on a single technical detail, pushed back on everything with this calm precision that was honestly attractive. After we settled, I asked her to dinner. She said no. 2 weeks later, I asked again. Another no. The third time she finally said yes, but told me later she only agreed because I'd shown appropriate persistence without crossing into harassment territory. We've been together 3 years now. She knows everything about Claire and Nathan. She's seen me on the anniversary dates when I get quiet and withdrawn. She's never pushed me to forgive or move on in some therapeutic way. She just exists beside me as the steady, unshakable force that makes me feel safe. 4 months ago, I proposed on a random Tuesday night while we were cooking dinner together. She said yes before I finished asking, laughing and kissing me with tomato sauce still on her hands. And then Claire's text appeared and dragged everything back to the surface. I showed the message to Diane immediately because we don't keep secrets. I expected her to tell me to delete it and block the new number. Instead, she read it 3 times, looked at me with those sharp attorney eyes and said, "If you're going to meet her, do it properly, on your terms. Close that door the way it should have been closed 6 years ago." So I texted Claire back, "I'll meet you Thursday at 7 p.m. at Morton's downtown. Come alone." Morton's is this upscale steakhouse in the financial district. Public, professional, nowhere near any place we used to go together. No emotional manipulation through nostalgia. What I didn't tell Claire was that I wouldn't be alone either. Diane insisted on coming. "I'm not there to defend you or fight your battles," she said. "I'm there because I'm your future and she needs to see that clearly." Thursday evening, Diane and I arrived at Morton's at 6:45. She looked devastating in a black suit, hair pulled back, every inch the successful attorney. We took a large corner booth with clear sightlines to the entrance. The plan was simple. I'd hear whatever Claire had to say, but I'd have my future wife visible beside me. No private heart-to-heart, no chance for tears and manipulation in some dark corner. Claire walked in at 7:03. I barely recognized her at first. 6 years ago, she'd been vibrant, always put together, confident in that way people are when life is going their way. The woman who walked through the door looked diminished. Her clothes were nice, but not the expensive brands she used to favor. No jewelry beyond small earrings. Her hair was different, shorter and darker. But it was her eyes that shocked me. They had this desperate, hollow quality, like someone who'd been living in survival mode for too long. She saw me immediately, then saw Diane, and her face fell. She approached slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I didn't realize you'd bring someone. You said you needed to talk." I replied evenly, "So talk. This is Diane." My fiancée. Diane nodded politely but didn't extend her hand or smile. Just acknowledged Claire's existence with the warmth you'd give a stranger. Claire stared at her for a long moment and I watched something crumble in her expression. Some last hope she'd been carrying. Could we talk privately? Claire asked, voice shaking. No, I said. Not aggressively, just firmly. Whatever you need to say, you can say here. She sat down across from us and tears were already forming. Marcus, I know what I did was unforgivable, but you need to understand. Claire, I interrupted. You sent me a message saying things aren't what I think. I'm here. Tell me what you came to tell me and let's be done with this. She looked at Diane again, then back at me. Nathan and it wasn't supposed to happen. It just. Don't, I said, holding up a hand. Do not tell me it just happened. I saw you in our bed the night before our wedding. There were wine glasses on the nightstand. You two were having a romantic evening in the apartment I paid for. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending it was a moment of weakness. The tears came harder. You're right. It wasn't the first time. It had been going on for 7 months. But Marcus, you have to understand the pressure I was under. I don't have to understand anything, I said. What I understand is that you betrayed me with my own brother while letting me pay for a wedding. You let me believe we had a future. You let 200 people fly in from across the country. And then you destroyed it all because you wanted someone else. I know, she said, voice breaking. I know what I did and I've paid for it, Marcus. God, have I paid for it. That's when Diane spoke for the first time, her voice sharp and controlled. Paid for it how? By having to face consequences for your own actions. Claire shot her a look, then focused back on me. Nathan left me 2 weeks after you did. Once everything blew up and everyone found out, he said he never meant for things to get serious. That he wasn't ready to settle down. I lost my job because people at the firm found out what happened. Most of our friends took your side. My parents barely speak to me. I've been in therapy for 4 years trying to understand why I sabotaged something good. I sat there listening to this litany of consequences and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just hollow detachment. And what does any of that have to do with me? I made a mistake, she whispered. I've spent 6 years regretting it. I've worked on myself. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry and that I understand what I destroyed. I hope. You hope what? Diane cut in, leaning forward slightly. That he'll forgive you so you can feel better about yourself? You want closure. But that's not his job. He's not your therapist and he's not your priest. I reached over and put my hand on Diane's. A silent thank you. Then I looked at Claire directly. You want me to say something that makes you feel less guilty. But I can't do that. What you did 6 years ago changed everything. I left my entire life behind. I rebuilt from scratch in a new city. And honestly, I'm better for it now. The business I built, the life I have, the woman I'm about to marry, none of that would exist if you hadn't done what you did. Claire's face crumpled. So you're saying you're glad it happened? I'm saying I've moved on completely, I replied. I don't think about you anymore. I don't wonder what if. I don't carry anger or hatred. You're just nothing to me now. And that's not me being cruel. That's just the truth. Marcus, please. Thank you for coming, I said, standing up. I mean that. I think I needed to see you one more time to realize how completely over this I am. But this is goodbye, Claire. For real this time. Diane stood beside me and looked at Claire with an expression that could cut steel. From this point forward, you do not contact Marcus again. Not for closure, not for apologies, not for anything. We're getting married in 12 days and you will not be part of our lives in any capacity. Are we clear? Claire just nodded, tears streaming down her face. We left her sitting there alone in that expensive restaurant, and I didn't look back. The drive home was quiet. Diane held my hand the whole way. When we got back to our apartment, she poured us both bourbon and we sat on the couch in comfortable silence. "How do you feel?" she finally asked. "Lighter," I admitted. "Like I just put down something heavy I didn't know I was still carrying." She smiled and kissed me. "Good. Now let's get married and never think about her again." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, my father called. We hadn't spoken in 6 years beyond awkward birthday texts. When everything happened with Claire and Nathan, he'd taken Nathan's side immediately. Told me I was overreacting, that these things happen in families, that I needed to be the bigger man and work it out. When I left the state, he said I was running away from my problems like a child. We'd exchanged maybe 20 words total since then. "Marcus," he said when I answered, his voice tired. "Nathan told me you met with Claire. He's really struggling right now. He wants to apologize, try to make things right before your wedding. I'm hoping you'll talk to him." I actually laughed. Not mean, just genuinely incredulous. "You're calling me to advocate for Nathan. The same Nathan who slept with my fiancée the night before my wedding." He sighed like he was dealing with an unreasonable child. "That was a long time ago. People make mistakes. He's family." "No," I said flatly. "He stopped being family the moment he betrayed me. And you stopped being much of a father when you chose him over me." Long silence. "That's not fair. I was trying to hold the family together. By asking me to forgive the unforgivable. You made your choice 6 years ago and I made mine. I left. I built a new life. I'm marrying a woman who actually respects me. Nathan and his apology can go to hell. And you know what? You're not invited to my wedding either. Don't call me again." I hung up. Diane squeezed my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. The next day, my business partner called sounding furious. "Dude, you need to know something. Claire showed up at my office an hour ago. Apparently she'd tracked down where he worked and came by to express concerns about me. Told him she was worried I was rushing into marriage without processing my trauma, that I should postpone the wedding to make sure I was doing it for the right reasons. He'd threatened to call security and she'd left, but the audacity of it stunned me. That's when Diane made an executive decision. She drafted a cease and desist letter through her firm and had it delivered to Claire that evening. The letter stated that any further contact with me, my fiancé, or any of our friends or associates would be considered harassment and would result in legal action. She didn't ask permission, just handled it. "You're too nice to do it yourself," she explained. And this woman clearly doesn't understand what no means. The morning after that, I got a long email from Nathan. I skimmed it without really reading. He's apparently engaged now, poor woman, and wanted to clear the air before his own wedding. Something about personal growth and understanding what he did was wrong. He mentioned that Claire reached out to him after seeing me and she's not in a good place mentally. Could I please consider being compassionate? I forwarded it to Diane without responding. She texted back, "Want me to send him one too?" I told her to keep it as an option. The wedding happened last Saturday and it was perfect. Small ceremony at a private estate, 40 people who actually wanted to be there. Diane looked absolutely stunning. My business partner was my best man and gave a speech about how I rose from the ashes like a phoenix in a three-piece suit. Diane's sister cried. I almost did too. During our first dance, Diane whispered, "No regrets." I knew what she was asking, not about marrying her, but about everything that led us here. "None," I said, and meant it completely. The day before the wedding, I'd gotten one final text from an unknown number. Just 3 words, "I'm sorry, Marcus." I deleted it without responding. Haven't heard from Claire since. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard she moved back to her hometown 3 hours away, working retail. I hope she figures her life out, but it's not my concern anymore. As for Nathan, his engagement apparently fell apart after his fiancée found out about what happened with Claire and me. He also lost his job at my father's company after they had some massive falling out. Last I heard, he moved 2 states away to start over.
Sounds familiar.
Karma doesn't need my help. My father sent a card after the wedding. No apology, just congratulations on your marriage with his signature. I threw it away. A cousin told me he's not doing well, that Nathan's departure hit him hard and he's finally admitted maybe he backed the wrong son. Too little, too late. He's alone now except for his second wife, who apparently isn't thrilled about how everything went down. Maybe someday we'll talk, but I'm not holding my breath. Diane is currently asleep on the couch next to me as I write this, exhausted from unpacking after our honeymoon. She's got case files spread across the coffee table, reading glasses crooked on her face, snoring softly. I've never been more certain about anything in my life than I am about choosing her. People told me I needed to forgive Claire and Nathan to move on, to find peace. But I don't think that's true. What they did was unforgivable and I'm not obligated to absolve them so they can feel better about themselves. What I did instead was build something new. I chose to invest my energy into creating a life that didn't include them rather than spending years being angry about what they destroyed. The woman who destroyed my life 6 years ago is nothing to me now. Not because I forgave her, but because I moved on so completely that she became irrelevant. And that's the best revenge there is.